Welcome to our deep dive. And this time we're looking at excerpts from Sebastian Marshall's Ikigai. It's really, fascinating mix of personal stories and philosophy, plus some advice that you could actually put into practice. We're going to try to understand how someone who's driven, but also really thoughtful, sees the world. And maybe along the way, you'll find something you can use in your own life.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's like we're getting a look inside the mind of someone who's super driven but also really self-aware.
Right away, the author shares a moment that's very personal. He
Mhm.
talks about being at a train station in Japan, a really peaceful scene, watching daily life unfold, families, kids playing, just ordinary routines. But instead of feeling relaxed, he finds himself crying. And not just a few tears, he says it's like years of bottled up emotions just pouring out.
That's a pretty powerful image, right? This peaceful scene and this outpouring of emotion. What he's struggling with, I think, is what it costs to be ambitious. He's chosen a path that most people don't, and that often means others don't really get it. That feeling of being alone, even if you're chasing something important, it can wear you down.
It makes you think about times when you haven't quite fit in with the people around you, maybe because of something you're working towards, a dream that others don't understand. It's a price you pay for aiming high. And then he asked this question, and I bet a lot of us have thought about it too. Should you work on yourself first or jump right into trying to change the world?
It's a tough one. He doesn't give a simple answer, which I like. He thinks both are important, but he says something interesting. When you're skilled and disciplined, it not only helps you personally, but you're also better at figuring out what causes you really care about, and you can make a real contribution. It's kind of like building a strong foundation before you build the house.
He even gives some concrete advice on how to do that. Travel, have deep conversations with people from all walks of life, and this one really struck me. Study societies from history that were successful. It's like he's saying, don't just start from scratch, look at what's worked before.
It reminds us that history isn't just boring facts, it's full of lessons about how people act, what drives them, and how positive change can happen.
This next part is where things get really interesting. He brings the samurai story, Ogami Ito, from the Lone Wolf and Cub comics. Ito wants revenge, and he's totally focused on it. He gives up everything for this mission. And then there's Sakan, another samurai, good-hearted but kind of scattered. He cares about people, but he drinks too much and lets himself get distracted. In the end, he's not effective because he's not focused. What do you think about this comparison?
It's a stark contrast, isn't it? Ido, even though he's driven by revenge, his dedication to his quest gives him a certain kind of strength. Sikon, he means well, but because he's not focused, his good intentions don't really go anywhere. I think the author's pointing out something about those who really want to achieve ambitious things. You often need that single-minded focus, to be willing to give up comfort and distractions for something bigger.
It makes me think of all those times I've gotten caught up in things that seemed urgent but weren't really important. It's like Ito's story is a reminder to ask yourself, is this actually getting me closer to my goal, or is it just a shiny distraction? Now, he goes into some deep stuff about power dynamics and analyzing history. He mentions Machiavelli, and then this difference between emperors and kings.
Yeah, what he's talking about is how power works. An emperor like Napoleon takes power through force. A king, traditionally, inherits their position. It's about where their authority comes from and how they use it.
He even uses the nullification crisis in the U.S. as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a history expert. Can you remind me what that was all about?
It was basically a fight between the federal government and South Carolina over taxes. South Carolina tried to say a federal law didn't apply to them. This, and later the Civil War, show how the U.S., which was designed to spread power out, gradually moved towards a stronger central government.
So even systems that are set up to limit central power, they can change over time. It's kind of unsettling to think about how power shifts, even in systems that seem stable. But thinking more personally, how do we see these power plays, like what Machiavelli talked about, happening in our own lives, like at work or even in our relationships?
Think about those times you've seen someone get ahead at work, not because they're skilled, but because they manipulate people above them, playing politics. That's straight out of Machiavelli. Or even in relationships, how someone might use guilt trips or manipulate your emotions to get their way. It's a good reminder to pay attention to these dynamics so we don't get taken advantage of.
Definitely. This whole section makes me wonder, how can we deal with these power dynamics in a way that's ethical and effective? It's like he's showing us how things really work, but it makes you think hard about how to play the game without compromising your values.
And that's exactly the challenge, isn't it? How to operate in a world where power is always at play, but still be ethical and true to yourself.
Hmm.
It's a tough balance. You need to be aware and know how to navigate it. It's interesting how he goes from power dynamics to something that seems really basic, like improving his diet. But when you think about it, isn't taking control of your health also a way of mastering yourself, like we were just talking about?
Totally. But he doesn't just jump into like green smoothies and all that. He's very strategic about it, like he's decluttering his body along with his mind.
He starts by adding in those good basic foods. Oatmeal, tuna, eggs, like laying the foundation. Remember how we talked about that for personal growth? But then he goes cold turkey. No alcohol, soda, drugs, cigarettes, caffeine, even pork, all gone. That's pretty drastic. He's honest about how much discipline it takes.
Yeah, and he's upfront about what you give up. Less instant gratification, sure. But what you could gain is huge. More years of a good life. Imagine being able to see more sunrises, read more books, spend more time with people you love, all because you made those choices. It makes you think twice about those little indulgences, doesn't it?
For sure. It makes you think about the long-term effects of what you do every day. And he doesn't stop there. He keeps refining, cutting out mammals, quitting shisha, even tackling sugar. It's like he's always experimenting, figuring out what works best for him.
It reminds me of that saying, your body is a temple. He even talks about switching from sweets to salty snacks while he's cutting out sugar. Have you ever tried to hack your cravings like that? It's like he's outsmarting his own body.
Yeah, it shows you don't have to be controlled by your cravings. You can find ways to manage them. And speaking of outsmarting things, he gets pretty passionate about being skeptical of new scientific studies, especially those health studies that are always in the news, like those wine is good for you studies.
Oh yeah, I see those headlines all the time. But he points out that just because two things happen together, it doesn't mean one causes the other.
Right.
Just because some people who drink wine live long lives doesn't mean it's the wine. Maybe they're wealthy, have less stress, or have strong social connections, all things that could make you live longer.
Exactly. It's a reminder to be critical of those easy answers, those health fads. We see this all the time with food. Coffee is bad, then it's good. You have to look past the headlines and understand the science, or if there even is any.
So we've got building a strong foundation, being skeptical of quick fixes, and mastering yourself. Now he talks about universally useful skills. It sounds like the tools you need for that exceptional life he keeps mentioning.
It's like he's giving you the skills you need to succeed in any area. Communication writing, negotiating, public speaking, dealing with conflict. Those are fundamental, no matter what you do.
And then he gets into numbers. He doesn't try to make it sound easy. He says numbers are either your friend or your enemy, no in between. Have you ever felt that way about math? Like it's either a superpower or your kryptonite?
Absolutely. He focuses on the basics, arithmetic, percentages, understanding basic financial statement stuff everyone should know, honestly. It's empowering to understand where your money goes and how to manage it well.
And he goes beyond that. Probability, statistics, especially this idea of variance. Life is full of random things that can mess up our plans, and if we understand that randomness, it can help us make smarter choices.
It's realizing you can't control everything, but you can be prepared for the unexpected.
Then he talks about execution and get stuff done skills. I think this is where a lot of us stumble. We have the ideas, the goals, but then doing it is hard.
He breaks it down into practical steps. Build good habits, keep your environment clean and organized. That can really help your mind be clear and train yourself to focus. It's like creating the perfect conditions to get things done.
He is a big believer in setting specific goals, not just vague ideas, defining what a project is, even learning some basic project management techniques. They don't really teach you that stuff in school, but it can make a huge difference in your work and your personal life.
It's all about taking those big ideas and making them into smaller steps. He even mentions small things, like being able to type fast and managing your email well. Imagine how much time you'd save if you were a keyboard master and your inbox didn't make you stressed.
It's like he's saying those little things matter, optimize them. Then he talks about health, of course, and he's straight up about it being a field full of contradictions and constantly changing information. It can be overwhelming.
He still says it's important to understand your body's basic systems. It's like knowing how your own body works. Nutrition, exercise, knowing the risks of addiction, those are the basics that apply no matter what the latest health trend is.
It's about figuring out what's real and what's just noise. And he ties this back to clear thinking, which we talked about before. He suggests looking into people like Eliezer Yudkowsky, who writes about rationality and all the mental biases that trick us.
It's like he's saying, Don't just accept things as they are. Question your own assumptions. Think critically.
Okay, now this part might be a bit controversial. He says that prima donnas get paid, while good soldiers often get overlooked. That seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
We're always told to be team players, to go above and beyond. But he makes a good argument for why those who are demanding and set clear boundaries often get ahead.
He's not saying you should be rude or disrespectful. It's more about knowing your value and not being afraid to ask for what you deserve. He knows it can be stressful, even lead to some negative things. But he thinks there are valuable lessons in seeing how these types of people operate.
The first thing he points out is that prima donnas know their time is valuable and they don't waste it. They're picky about projects and walk away from clients who don't meet their standards. Like they have this internal compass that guides their decisions.
It's having the confidence to say no, even when it's tempting to say yes to everything. Then he says prima donnas aren't afraid to be demanding. They're clear about what they expect from the start and push back when those expectations aren't met. It's not about being difficult, it's about protecting their time, their energy, and in the end, their ability to do great work.
They're playing the long game. His third point is that prima donnas are really good at what they do. They have the skills, they have a history of success, and that gives them leverage. It's like they've earned the right to be demanding because they consistently deliver.
It's about building a reputation that speaks for itself. But he admits not everyone's cut out to be a prima donna. Some of us aren't comfortable with confrontation or pushing boundaries. So he offers another option. Develop a strong code of conduct and stick to your principles. Don't just react to each situation.
It's like having that internal compass we talked about. But instead of using it for demands, you're using it to guide your actions based on integrity.
He lays out 4 levels of thinking. The first is not thinking at all, which he compares to being stuck in a swamp just reacting to whatever happens. The second is tactical thinking, focus on the right now. That often leads to feeling like you're always putting out fires.
Then there's strategic thinking, which is about long-term goals and making choices that get you there. And finally, philosophical thinking, which comes from really understanding your values, beliefs, and purpose. Each level builds on the one before it, leading to more clarity and purpose.
And he argues that acting based on your principles from that philosophical clarity can be really powerful. It's about making choices that match your deepest values, even when it's hard. He even shares his own code of conduct, which includes things like valuing his time, doing great work, treating others with respect and gratitude, and only working with people who are genuinely excited to work with him.
He even talks about ripping up money that someone gave him reluctantly. That's a powerful statement. It's like he's saying, my principles aren't for sale, even for money.
It's about putting integrity and purpose above short-term gain. And he wants us to create our own codes of conduct to figure out those non-negotiable principles that will guide us and help us navigate life's complexities.
It's like making your own personal constitution for how you want to be in the world.
Exactly. From there, he gets into the practical side of working with clients and contracts. He actually suggests skipping formal contracts if you can. He thinks they often create an adversarial relationship and can cause more problems later on.
Instead, he likes building relationships based on trust and mutual understanding. He believes in the power of a handshake deal. Now, I know that might sound risky, especially in business. What are your thoughts on that?
I see the appeal, especially if you value strong relationships and a collaborative approach. Contracts can feel very transactional, but I also think it depends on the situation and how much you trust the other person. He does say this might not be for everyone or every situation, but the main idea is important. Try to build relationships based on trust and shared understanding, whether there's a formal contract or not.
Makes sense. So let's say you're in a situation where you do need a contract. He's got some good tips. Be upfront about your prices and what you expect. Avoid clients who are known to be difficult or who don't pay. Document agreements, even if it's not a formal contract, and be ready to walk away if it's not a good fit.
It's about protecting yourself, but also maintaining healthy boundaries. But he doesn't just talk about clients and contracts. He gives advice for anyone who feels stuck or struggling to reach their goals.
He says to take a step back and ask yourself some hard questions. What am I really passionate about? What are my strengths and weaknesses? What am I willing to give up to reach my goals? What's holding me back? Have you ever done that kind of self-assessment? It can be really revealing.
It's easy to get caught up in everyday life and forget about the big picture. Taking time to reflect and be honest with yourself is crucial. He also says to find mentors or advisors, people who can give you guidance and support, especially when things get tough. Think about someone you admire, who's achieved something you want to achieve. What could you learn from them?
That's a good point. And then he tackles those two big roadblocks, fear and procrastination. They can be so paralyzing.
He says to figure out what you're afraid of and then make a plan to deal with it. It's like shining a light on those doubts and finding ways to overcome them. He's also a big fan of breaking down big tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. Think about a goal you've been putting off. What's one small thing you could do today to get a little closer? Even a tiny step can get you moving.
It's that journey of 1,000 miles thing. He also believes in setting deadlines and holding yourself accountable. He even says to reward yourself for making progress. It's like acknowledging those small wins can keep you motivated.
It's about finding ways to enjoy the journey, not just focusing on the destination.
And this next part really speaks to me. Stop being afraid of success. Go after those big opportunities, the ones we often shy away from. Why do you think we self-sabotage like that?
I think it's fear, self-doubt, and maybe even some deep-down beliefs about what we deserve. He wants us to challenge those beliefs and ask ourselves, what if I can do more than I think? He's saying, stop underestimating yourself. Start believing you can achieve great things.
And he says to shift our focus. Instead of dwelling on what could go wrong if we succeed the fears that keep us playing small, think about the good we can do with our success and influence. It's like he's saying, don't let fear stop you from making a difference.
He then gets very specific about going after those big opportunities. First, figure out who your ideal clients are, the ones who share your values and vision. Then, make a plan to reach them. Be proactive. Don't just wait for things to happen.
And then the bold part. Ask for what you want. Don't be afraid to negotiate, to push for what you're worth, but also be willing to walk away from deals that aren't good for you. It's about knowing your value and not settling.
It's understanding that sometimes the best deals are the ones you don't make. And then he talks about something interesting, spreading the wealth once you've achieved it. Not just money, but also sharing your time, knowledge, and resources.
He tells a story about how he's been giving away money like candy lately, flying friends around the world, funding their projects. It's like he's saying, success isn't just about getting rich, it's about using your wealth to make a positive impact.
It's recognizing that true abundance comes from sharing what you have with others.
And then he hits us with this line. We're on this planet for a blink of an eye, a single warm teardrop on the cold oceans of eternity. Wow. Puts things into perspective, doesn't it? It makes you think about how you're using your time, what you want to leave behind.
It's a reminder that life is short, and we should focus on things that matter, on creating something meaningful that lasts.
And then he goes back to something he's clearly passionate about. Not arguing with peasants online. Now, I know that word might sound harsh, but it's talking about those people who are closed-minded, won't listen to reason, and hold on to their beliefs no matter what evidence you show them. We've all met them, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He says it's a waste of time and energy to argue with them. It's like talking to a brick wall.
He says they're stuck in a tribal mindset where they identify with a group and reject anything that challenges their group's beliefs. It's like they're more interested in winning an argument than in finding the truth.
He compares this to a more individualistic mindset, where people are willing to think for themselves, question their own assumptions, and consider different points of view. He gives an example of a peasant he met online who had this completely illogical and uninformed opinion about wealth.
He didn't argue, knowing it would be pointless. It's like he's saying, choose your battles. Don't waste energy on people who aren't willing to learn.
And he gives some practical advice on how to spot these peasants online. Look out for inflammatory language, personal attacks, and an unwillingness to have a civil conversation. It's about recognizing the signs and disengaging before you get dragged into a pointless argument.
It's protecting your own mental and emotional well-being. He says to develop a thick skin and not take it personally when you encounter these types of people online. It's like remembering their behavior reflects on them, not on you.
Absolutely. And then he moves on to advice for those who want to break free from limiting beliefs and achieve more. He starts by describing a conversation with a mentor who explained how he moved up in his career by strategically switching companies.
His mentor realized he was stuck in his current role and needed a fresh start somewhere new to be seen as capable of handling more responsibility. It's like sometimes you have to make a bold move to shake things up and create new opportunities.
He then gives a list of things you can do to boost your career and achieve more success. Take accounting classes to understand finances better. Work on your social skills because relationships are important. Master negotiation because it's not always about taking what you're offered.
He also talks about building good credit and managing your money responsibly. It's like he's saying financial stability is key to success.
And then he talks about skills that are valuable everywhere, learning to code or other tech skills, becoming a fast typer, which is seriously useful these days, even taking up a martial art.
It's like he's encouraging us to become well-rounded people, mentally and physically.
He also emphasizes being physically fit through exercise and good nutrition. And of course, he goes back to lifelong learning. Read a lot, take classes, go to conferences, find mentors, and be curious.
It's about always learning new things and adapting to a world that's changing faster than ever.
And in the middle of all this advice, he says something simple but profound. I'm just trying. It reminds you that even someone who's achieved a lot still faces challenges and has to put in the work.
It's like he's saying being great isn't about reaching a destination, it's about constantly striving.
He shares stories about his own journey, injuries, financial struggles, all the hours of work. It's like he's showing us that success isn't always glamorous.
It's about grit, resilience, and being willing to face the tough stuff along the way. And he wants us to find joy in the process, to embrace the challenges, and never stop pushing for something more.
He offers advice for when you're feeling overwhelmed or discouraged. We all have those moments. Start small. Focus on the basics. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small wins. And surround yourself with supportive people. It's like a pep talk for your soul.
And he comes back to that central message. Take action. Stop overthinking. Stop procrastinating. Just start doing.
He reminds us that even a small step in the right direction is better than standing still. As you take action, you build momentum. And then he asks this powerful question, what else is life?
It's like he's challenging us to look at our priorities, how we spend our time, and ask ourselves if we're truly living a life that has meaning and makes us feel fulfilled.
He's saying there's more to life than just consuming, right? More than just watching TV or scrolling through social media. We can do so much more.
Yeah, like we're not just passive consumers. We can create, build, make a difference.
He wants us to be creators, builders, to leave the world a better place. And you know what? He reminds us that we don't have to be amazing to make a difference. We just have to try.
So how do we actually take action? He talks about scratching and clawing forward, meaning it's not always going to be pretty, right? Making big changes can be messy.
Yeah, he gets it. There will be setbacks, times when you feel like you're going backwards, but you got to keep pushing, keep making those little improvements. Never give up.
He uses the example of changing a habit, like quitting smoking or cutting out soda, which we talked about before. Think about a time you tried to change a habit. It's rarely easy, right? Ups and downs all the way.
The important thing is to keep moving forward. Learn from the slip-ups and don't lose sight of the goal. He actually gives some good advice on how to make changing habits easier. Start small, focus on one habit at a time, track your progress, and find a way to make it fun.
Like set yourself up to win, not to fail. And having a support system is so important, whether it's friends, family, or even a coach, to keep you on track.
It's true, you don't have to do it alone. There's power in having people who believe in you, who support your goals. And be patient, be persistent. Real change takes time and effort.
He's saying don't get discouraged if you don't see results right away. Keep showing up, keep putting in the work, and those small changes will eventually add up to big ones.
And he comes back to action again. Imperfect action is better than no action at all. I really connect with that message. It's easy to get stuck overthinking and planning and never actually starting.
Have you ever been there? Like you're stuck in your own head and it's stopping you from moving forward.
He's telling us to embrace the messiness, to learn as we go, and not be afraid to make mistakes.
And get feedback from people you trust. It's like having another perspective, helping you see things you might miss.
Be open to learning and growing, even when it's tough.
Now he gets into some practical productivity tips. Think about your workday. Are there times when you're more focused? He says to find those times and schedule your most important tasks for then.
Work with your natural energy, not against it. He also talks about getting rid of distractions, having a dedicated workspace, and being mindful of how you use technology. Tech can be amazing, but it can also be a huge distraction if you're not careful.
Like when you end up going down an internet rabbit hole instead of doing what you're supposed to. We've all done that.
Don't forget to take breaks. Give yourself time to rest and recharge. It sounds counterintuitive, but breaks can actually make you more productive.
It's like a reset for your brain. You come back feeling refreshed.
He also talks about how he's shifted from focusing on individual tasks to what he calls cycles. It's a different way of thinking about your work and life.
He has these 3 cycles: expansion, maintenance, and world. Expansion is all about being creative and building new things. That's when you're coming up with ideas, pushing yourself.
Maintenance is about keeping things running smoothly, those everyday responsibilities, making sure things move forward.
The world is about connecting with people, building relationships, contributing to something bigger than yourself, giving back, making a difference, finding purpose.
Each cycle has its own energy and focus. By moving through them, you create a more balanced way to live and work.
It's like a rhythm for your life.
He also emphasizes being flexible. Life changes all the time, and your cycles should change too. It's about finding what works for you in each phase of your life.
So last but not least, he talks about consistency, which is especially important for those of us who struggle with keeping good habits going. Think about a habit you've tried to build. Was it easy to do it every single day?
He says, start by tracking your current habits to see where you're at. Then pick the habits that are most important to you, the ones you're most likely to stick with, and focus on those.
Set yourself up for success by choosing habits that fit your values and goals.
And start small. Build those habits gradually. Find a way to make them enjoyable. If you hate doing something, you're not going to keep doing it, are you?
Make those changes something you can keep up, something that feels good and natural.
Don't expect too much too soon, and don't get discouraged by setbacks.
Be kind to yourself. Change takes time. And celebrate those small wins along the way.
Exactly. And he ends with this powerful thought. Purity is something you can't achieve without putting in a lot of effort.
A good reminder that trying to be your best is a lifelong journey. It's about always striving to improve, to make a positive impact, to live a life that reflects your values and goals.
So wrapping up this deep dive into Sebastian Marshall's Ikigai, here are some key takeaways for you. Take ownership. Your life is what you make it.
Focus on what truly matters to you and go after it with everything you've got.
Master yourself. Develop self-control, discipline, and resilience.
Take action. Don't let fear hold you back. Start small, experiment, and learn from your mistakes.
And live with purpose. Find what matters to you and contribute to something bigger than yourself.
This deep dive has been all about ambition, self-mastery, and finding meaning in life. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to make a real difference. Think about these ideas and how you can use them in your own life. What small change can you make today to get closer to your goals? What habit can you start to become a better, more fulfilled person? Remember, even the longest journey starts with a single step.